Okay, so if you've ever spent an entire evening just binge watching a season or two or three of a TV show or scrolling through Instagram or TikTok until basically your eyes fall out, then you know what it's like to overconsume content. And it doesn't make you a bad person. I mean, we all do it. You may be even doing it right now, watching some nobody YouTuber on your quest for something new to watch or fall asleep to. Thank you. So we've all been guilty of over-consuming, especially when we could be using that time to be doing something productive, to be creating something or making something. It's just easier to pull out your phone and zone out, disconnect, and just spend hours existing and consuming. But think about how you feel after one of those marathon sessions. Chances are you likely didn't feel good about it. Why is that? Well, if you're like me, when I overconsume, I feel literally sick. And not just because of the lost sleep or the eye pain, although I'm sure that is part of it, but because I look at what I've done with my time and I feel so unproductive because consuming is literally the opposite of being productive. It's the opposite of creating. Like if I finish scrolling Instagram after 2 hours looking at memes, like there's no prize. Can you imagine if there was a prize? But no, there's no prize for getting to the end of my feed. I literally have nothing great to show for the time that I invested in it. And the realization that I just wasted like 2 hours makes you feel one of two things. One, you either feel enormously guilty and you feel like the world's biggest loser, although there is a prize for that. Or number two, you think to yourself, well, I might as well continue now. I mean, I've wasted this much time already, so I might as well just keep going. Like how many of us get to the end of our post and Instagram literally says, stop. There's no more. And you pull down to refresh hoping that somebody posted something in those 2 seconds, and sometimes somebody did. And that's the world of consumption. Companies invest billions of dollars just to keep us scrolling, just to keep us swiping, just to keep us watching and consuming content so that they can serve ads between it all. Hey, you're probably unhappy, buy this. And the worst part is they typically keep us glued to the screen with content that is negative, that is designed to shock or outrage us instead of content that's designed to inspire or educate. Like, do I really need to watch somebody get unreasonably angry about something ridiculous? And you say no, but the brain is like, yeah, let's do that. So there are obvious consumption cons, part of which are feeling like your time was wasted, that you have nothing to show for it, that you've built no new skills, you've unlocked no new achievements. And they started putting like achievements in video games so that somebody can feel productive. But I feel like video games kind of goes under the category of consumption too, because you may save the world in a video game, but like how much money did you make? I mean, you're not all streamers, right? I mean, come on. And your character in the video game may have like a six-pack, but do you? I mean, I don't, but I could have if I wasn't such a consumer. So compare that with creation, with making things. Photography, drawing, music, writing, sculpture, dance, design, making websites. And we're not just talking about art, but there are other creative, productive things that everybody can make with their time. Building your business skills, building your actual business, working on your public speaking, creating YouTube videos, creating a course to teach others what you know, and all types of self-improvement, interpersonal skills, critical thinking, psychology, or even exercising, working out, like literally creating new muscle and improving your physique and therefore your mental health and confidence. Even researching things that you're interested in for fun. You're creating knowledge, you're creating brain cells that didn't exist before. That's how the brain works, right? Neuroscientists back me up. You create tangible, measurable results from the time and effort that you invested. And studies show that creating gives us a sense of accomplishment. I mean, even if we think about it from a scientific standpoint, when you're making something and you're achieving a creative goal, it can literally give you like a boost of dopamine when you accomplish it. You have something that you can show for your time. You've literally brought something into the world that did not exist before. And unlike the disconnect that happens with consuming, creating things and making things moves and inspires others. You create connection with people that see and interact with what you make, and people that resonate with what you do or want to make something similar. You can create community. So yes, creation, good. So why don't we just create all the time? Well, the simple answer is we can't. We can't just be creating all the time, just like we can't stop consuming altogether. There's a balance. We have to consume to create. You can't just drive a car forever without stopping at a gas station or plugging in for you EV users. The brain needs creative fuel to keep going and keep making. But it depends on consuming the right things, just like eating the right things. When you eat right, it shows in every other part of your life. If you consume the right things, it shows in your work and in what you create. So it can be good to consume regularly, it just depends on the reasons why you're consuming. Because most of the bad stuff that we mentioned, the isolation, the feeling like you wasted time, the shame, comes too much from that guilty pleasure consuming. Reality shows, vapid social media, yes, even K-dramas. They're so fun to watch, but too much of it is junk food for the mind. But there is a ton of great content that we can consume that makes us better persons, more complete people, smarter, more creative, content that improves everything that we make, like mental broccoli, if you will. The goal would be to lean toward content that is less junky and try to consume content for the right reasons, for inspiration or understanding of your craft, for skill building and learning, or observation or imitation of your favorite creators or makers. For viewpoint challenging, you can actually learn to do something that is maybe the reverse or the opposite of what you would do naturally. Learning how to do something that is maybe counterintuitive to the way that you know how to do it can make you a better creator. And then of course just consuming for the general enjoyment of other people's created stuff, seeing what other people put time and effort into and enjoying that. The basic rule of thumb when consuming content is, do I feel better after watching it? No? Well, then maybe you had too much, or maybe it just wasn't the right kind of content. Because when we do consume the right kind of content, you actually feel more energized. You feel more equipped for your next creative session. It'll make you a better maker of stuff. And hopefully we can all get to a happy point where we're creating more than we consume. Maybe you think to yourself, okay, yeah, I get that. More creating is good. Creating is better. But there are honestly challenges to creating. Consuming is just easier. It's more convenient. And as we know, humans gravitate toward what is easy and convenient. This is literally why the escalator was invented. And you put the escalator right there next to the stairs. So sexy. We come to the crossroads, and if there's an empty couch on one side and the empty canvas on the other side, we will almost always choose the couch. And let's be honest, it's not always just because consuming is easier, but because creating is hard. We all face challenges to creating, and the first step of getting over those challenges is actually identifying what they are. Number one, lack of motivation. It's just plain difficult to create, and especially when what you do creatively takes some precision and some skill. You might not feel in the mood to do it, or that you can dedicate that level of focus that's required to make good work. And that's fine. I mean, we can't force inspiration or creativity as long as it doesn't stop us from creating for too long. The other challenge to creating is thinking that it needs to be perfect, and that comes from overconsumption. In our consumption phase, we just see so many people who are so good at what they're doing, and so we feel that if we're going to put something out, when we're sharing what we create, that it has to be perfect. Making art already takes a level of commitment, and then sharing that art takes another level of bravery. Art is an act of bravery. When you create something, when you make something, you're putting a little piece of yourself out into the world for the world to look at, to judge, and to comment on. And if you're making a YouTube talking head video like this one, then you're not just putting a little piece of you out there, you're putting you out there. I'm putting myself out here for some internet troll to just come by and comment, "You fake and you ugly," and just ruin my day. I'd love the engagement though. Also, I don't know why they have that accent. I just created them. So that's another challenge. You may also feel like you don't have the tools or you don't have what you need to really get started. And in that case, maybe you see my previous video. You may say to yourself, well, I'm just not the creative type. And when people say that, my wife always says, that's not true. Everybody can be a creative. Sometimes it's just a matter of trying things and then seeing what you're good at and just starting. And nowadays, affirmations are more popular than ever, and people use positive affirmations to tell themselves what they can or cannot do. And so if you tell yourself, well, I'm just not the creative type, well, that's a type of affirmation too. It's a negative affirmation. So if you can stop saying that to yourself or about yourself, then it'll stop being true, and you'll start being a creative person. Another thing that can block creativity is not having a concrete plan. Like, I don't have a goal yet, or I don't have an established process yet. I remember years ago paying $200 to be a part of a gym for a month. The $10 plan at Planet Fitness was not a thing back then. So anyway, I paid the $200, I had all this good intention, but when I got to the gym, I didn't have a plan. And maybe you've tried to get in shape before, so you know this, but when you walk into a gym and you don't have a plan, then you just look at all the machines and you just start using whatever machine and trying to do whatever motion. I'm gonna figure it out. And then you walk out of there in like an hour and you don't know what you did, or if it made any difference, but you sure are sore. But it also sets me up for failure the next time that I go in because I'm just looking forward to being confused again. So the same can be said of a creative process, right? If we don't have a concrete goal or an established process for what we do creatively, then when we finally sit down to do our creative thing, we're just entering a world of confusion. And nobody likes to feel that way, so we just pull out our phones and consume instead. The last common creative challenge, similar to not having a concrete goal, is not having a concrete deadline for when you need to get things done. If I haven't said to myself, I'm going to create this thing by this date, then there's no sense of urgency. It just becomes something that I'm going to do someday, and someday can just very easily turn into never. So you can get over these creative challenges by thinking a little bit beforehand about what you're going to create, maybe how you're going to create it, just a vague idea, so that you come in with a plan, and also having a concrete date in mind for when you'd like to complete it. So you can set that goal and you can set that plan, otherwise it'll never happen. So what's the takeaway? Humans have the innate desire to create things. Creating makes us feel good, it gives us a sense of accomplishment, and it makes us happier even though it's hard to do, and especially hard to get started when consumption is the mainstream. But if we can strike that balance between responsible consumption that inspires and motivates and use it for fuel for making something new and leaving your mark on the world by creating something, then we'll be a whole lot happier. I believe in creating 2 actionable items at the end of each video. It's part of setting those goals. And sometimes 3 is a nice number, but it can also be too much. Like, we can easily remember 2 things that we want to work on for this week upcoming. So if you're like me and you want to move toward this goal of more creating versus consuming, the first thing that you can do is create a baseline to see where you're at right now in terms of consuming, because if you can't measure it, then you can't improve it. On our phones, typically you can find a readout of how long you've spent on certain apps like social media. So that's the first step, right? Finding out how much time you're actually consuming, specifically consuming things that don't add any real benefit to your life. Number 2 is then taking some of that time and seeing if you can use it to do something productive or make something or create something instead. Or maybe you take some of that time that you're using to consume junk content and find something else that you can consume that will make your life measurably better. Could be audiobooks, podcasts, educational videos, skill building content related to what you're interested in making, or even motivational content to put you in the right frame of mind to create. Whatever moves you toward the ultimate goal of less consuming and more creating. Try it out and let me know if it works. Now, if you're interested in more excuses that we tend to make in order to not get started while fooling ourselves that we are, then I recommend watching this video here, or here, I don't know where it goes. And once again, I don't have a thing to say at the end of the video, so bye. I've got to take this.